Hello, welcome into episode 158 of the Stomp the Bus Show. I'm your host, Mark Harris, and we got a little bit of NFL Combine talk for ASU and basketball talk, both men's and women's. Two different, two positive, programs right now. One played today. The women beat Iowa State, and the men. I mean, they struggle against so many teams, right? But if it's the Kansas Jayhawks, those ASU Sun Devils are basically like the Bill Walton UCLA Bruins. They just don't lose. It's incredible to see. It was a great game. If it is Bobby Hurley's final home game at Desert Financial Arena at ASU, he went out on top. Very fitting that it was Kansas. And I'll dive into that in a bit. I know that's a little more topical, but I want to get started on the NFL draft stuff and the combine, and really not necessarily diving into the specific, measurements and numbers, but more the reaction and kind of setting the stage for what the NFL draft could look like for ASU. So, please like and subscribe before I get going. Please like and subscribe on YouTube. Please rate and review on your podcast platform of choice. And let's get started. So ASU had 4 players invited to the NFL Combine: Jordyn Tyson, wide receiver, offensive tackle Max Iheanachor, cornerback Keith Abney, and linebacker Keyshawn Elliott. I would say that I don't think any of them hurt themselves figuratively, not literally either, hurt their draft stock at the NFL Combine. To say that, I think Elliott had some good broad jump scores. I think if you think of him as like a mid-round linebacker, you don't really change that leaving the NFL Combine. So Keyshawn Elliott did well. I'd say Keith Abney, same boat for him. Obviously, he has a little bit higher draft stock. And, with Keith Abney, I think that, he's going to be someone that probably just absolutely killed it in the interviews. I think people really like the competitive skating background, which I guess I knew about, but it hasn't really been something that's come up, as an ASU football fan in the last few years. But for me, it's just he's a really good player, and let's hope he's not going to get picked in the first round. I think that's just, if you're an ASU fan, you can say whatever you want, like, oh, we should be, but he's not going to get picked in the first round. He very well could get picked in the second round. And in fact, if you watch the show, I'm a Seahawks fan. 64th pick. That's what happens when you win the Super Bowl. I would be really happy if he is still on the board at 64. As an ASU fan, I would hope that he's kind of gone by then. But either way, that would be a great. I mean, if you're Keith Abney, that's a great scenario for you, because Seahawks are likely going to let Rick Woolen leave, and then that's just a great defense to join. And I think he would be able to pick it up. We know he's a really smart guy, and he has the physical tools. And so I would be really happy with Keith Abney on the Seahawks. And that's kind of the range. There's definitely a chance he slips into the third round. Would be very, 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 very surprising if he was still on the board entering the final 4 rounds of the draft. So Keith Abney really showed out. And then Tyson, he didn't run. He didn't, do all of the drills. He did hit 26 reps on the bench, which is absurd. And I know that all of these guys are great athletes and everything, but for someone and he's not like a small wide receiver. I think that's fair, but putting up 26 reps on the bench, 225, 26 times. And if you watch the video, he just did it with ease, man. That is so impressive. And it just really it explains a lot about why he's so successful. If you're just that strong, and this is something I've talked about. He has the athletic background, the fact that his brother plays in the NBA, and I think Jordyn Tyson is really taking a bigger role this year with the Cavs. I'm sure that really weighs heavily with a lot of NFL teams. I think there's something to that, right? We know, we had ASU women's basketball had some of the Amukamara sisters, or at least one of the sisters back in the day. Obviously, we know Prince Amukamara from the Giants. I believe he played at Nebraska back in the day. And like, I do think there's something to like these athletic families. And I'm not, going to get into, detail, but like, I do think there's something to that. And I think that could apply to Jordyn Tyson. You see it with, I mean, heck, we saw it with Sam Levitt, like, right? Like his older brother played in the NFL. Drake May, Luke May, like the May brothers in North Carolina, like where I'm from in Washington, there's like the Heward brothers. I mean, I think two of them were NFL quarterbacks, really high level, so there's a million examples, right? I'm sure there's ASU. I know there's ASU examples of this that I'm forgetting, but those are just kind of some of the ones that come to mind. There's NFL, like Julius Jones and Thomas Jones, the two running backs in the NFL. There's so many examples and many that I'm forgetting. But I do think with Tyson, just that athletic background, I think that I just think that's something that really these teams factor into. And obviously, I mean, Tyson is a great character guy. They're going to love that he was coached up by Hines Ward, and you can see the coaching shine through. And like, just straight up, in some ways, like this guy is just like a more twitchy Hines Ward. Hines Ward was a bigger player, obviously, but excuse me. I just think that Tyson, like, I think it was Louis Riddick who just tweeted out like he's the best wide receiver in the class. The only thing that's holding him back in terms of a draft stock is injuries. And you know what? Like that's fair. And not all of the injuries are like, I don't think it's like, so I think he had the issue he had coming into ASU. I forget exactly what it was, but that kept him out basically the whole first year. Yeah, like that was something more serious, but like in 24 it was a broken clavicle, right? Against U of A. And man, if that didn't happen, ASU beats Texas and they wouldn't have beaten Ohio State. But man, like it's unfortunate we didn't get to see Jordyn Tyson in the playoff last year. It really is, because the lack of wide receivers the lack of wide receiver depth in that game really showed. Credit to the guys that were out there, but yeah. So anyway, that's unfortunate. And then the hamstring, obviously, like that's why he didn't run. I totally get it. Like hamstring injuries are not something you want to mess around with at all. And so we'll see what happens when ASU has its pro day in a little bit. There's going to be a lot of attention there, which is good for some of the guys who didn't get invited to the combine. I'm kind of surprised that Clayton Smith didn't get invited to the combine, not because he put up like insane statistics last year, but he former 5-star, he has the frame, he has the athleticism. He was a good run defender. And so all of these things, like I'm just surprised that he didn't get invited to the combine. We'll see what he can do at ASU's pro day. Ghost Rouser kind of in the same boat. My guy, Shimon Mateer, I really hope that Shimon Mateer can, make a name for himself. I think that he'll be able to block as a tight end in the NFL level. So just got that low, what would you call it? Like good, strong base that he has. Like that's going to help, even if against it's a higher caliber of athlete. So there's some guys I'm forgetting, maybe a Ben Coleman, a Xavier Alford, heck, I think Jesus Gomez, like, I think there's a sneaky chance he could, if ASU has 5 guys drafted before we went to the combine, I think that he could actually wind up being the 5th. Sometimes kickers go a little bit higher than you think, and you're like, what? And who knows? Like maybe we'll see. There are some good kickers. College kickers are not as bad as they once were. That's for sure. But anyway, Tyson will be interesting to see how his pro day goes, but he's fallen a little bit in these kind of top 50, these mock drafts. But I actually think it's not about being the first wide receiver off the board. I really think it's great in the moment and you get more money. I get it. But like, if he goes to just a situation where he just has a better quarterback, that's the ultimate thing. Like and we've seen years. I mean, Justin Jefferson was not the top wide receiver off the board in his class. He fell into the 20s. Brandon Ayuk from ASU, there were guys taken ahead of him. Now, I don't know if Brandon Ayuk's the best guy in his class, but like he's had a really good career. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. And then, I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigba, he was the first guy off the board in his draft class, but he went number 20, which is still absurd. I cannot believe that fell into the Seahawks' lap. I'm so thankful it did because he's a monster. So I think like getting picked in that range is not the end of the world for Tyson. And especially like if he goes to a team where he can be like the number 2 receiver, imagine having to cover Jordyn Tyson as the number 2. He's the second option on a team. If he goes to, if he goes to like the Vikings league, if they deal Jordan Addison and they get Tyson, like you pair up Jefferson and Tyson, like that could be awesome to watch. So anyway, I do so, but with tying this back, like he's kind of more in like the 20 range. You see him like Jets at 16. You don't really see him as much in like the top 10. That's more of Carnell Tate and Mekhi Lemon up there, which I'm not going to really push back against that too much. Like the injuries, like that can't just be, I get it. I'm wearing an ASU shirt, like, but you can't just wave that away. Like that's a very legitimate thing to bring up. So anyway, Jordyn Tyson, but I really think the main story of this draft is, I bury the lead here is ASU offensive tackle Max Iheanachor. You see all the lists, like he's really one of the best athletic offensive tackles in NFL Combine history, right? The RAS scores have shown that. And I think he ran tied for the second fastest 40-yard dash of any offensive tackle, and I think, or of any offensive lineman. I think the only guy ahead was a center from Iowa. So like that's a really good place to be. And there's more and more people look at the tape and they look at how he performed against David Bailey. And I'm sure they're looking at the Texas game last year too. And I'm sure they're looking at the improvement he made in the 2023 season when he was really thrown into the fire. And they're looking at the Senior Bowl tape, practice plays. Like there's a lot of things stacking up. And then you just like, oh, this guy's huge. He's a great athlete. He has great feet because he was a soccer player growing up in Nigeria. We talk, you hear all these sports analysts talk about this, like, oh, a multi-sport athlete. Well, this guy, his journey is pretty incredible. Like he played soccer growing up in Nigeria. It's like, that makes sense. Like that's kind of the Hakeem Olajuwon story, right? Like and that's showed his footwork in the NBA. That's one of the reasons why he was such an excellent player. You add in, he moves to LA as a teenager, 13, I don't know. And he's a basketball player. And who knows, like if he wanted to just play basketball, didn't like football, whatever, like he could, I don't know if he'd be able to go to the NBA, but he could be like, I don't know, like someone who plays in Europe or something. Like he's got the athleticism. He's 6'6". It's not like he's 6'4" or something. So you have that in his back pocket. And so you have these athletic skills, these ways he's moving that aren't just typical, like drop back. He's not just dominating at these camps. He's just and in football, like he was ASU's second best offensive player last year, maybe the third best if you want to argue Raleek Brown, whatever. But like he's going to be the second highest drafted. And this is showing up in mock drafts. And so one of the people I go to quite a bit, and this isn't a mock draft that I'm showing, but it's a top 50. And it's Daniel Jeremiah from the NFL Network, who is someone that I think is just pretty well respected. And if you look, like Iheanachor is just skyrocketing up his draft prospect rankings. He's skyrocketing up. And so I'm just going to search for him at the bottom. Yeah, look at 31. He was 34 the last time. And again, you read up the write-up, right? It's things I'm growing up. It's junior college. Tape isn't perfect, but there's clues hinting he could end up being one of the best offensive linemen in this year's draft class. In pass pro, he jumps out of his stance and stays square. Late to the punch, exposing his chest, but he still has the strength to absorb and anchor. He is very athletic to redirect and smother counter moves in the run game. He has knockback power. That is so important. You're not just like getting to the block and like it's neutral when you get there with the defensive lineman. He is pushing the guy back. Those things can change games. Okay, if you watch some of the Kenneth Walker runs in the Super Bowl, the one he had against the Rams in the regular season, you will see some of the Seahawks offensive linemen pushing guys back, and that creates so much extra space, and that makes such a difference. This back to Daniel Jeremiah. He moves well on pulls and second-level blocks. It might take a little time, but Iheanachor has the raw tools to develop into a high-level starter. He showed a lot of promise at the Senior Bowl. So that's Iheanachor, and then I'll move up to Jordyn Tyson, he drops, but I think some of it's just due to Freeling, Miller, Cooper, and Thieneman. I mean, Thieneman just absolutely balled out at the combine. He moves, so he drops a little bit to 21st overall. And it's all the things: wow plays, fluid mover, variety of releases, suddenness off the line. He will weave and get cornerbacks off balance before exploding away from them. He makes some incredible catches on deep balls. He tracks the ball with ease over the shoulder and can almost hover in the air waiting for it to come down. Remember the incredible play he had against UCF last year. There were so many individual excellent plays last year that I don't want to be like, oh, that was the best individual play anyone made last year. But it was in the running. It was the best non-Scattaboo play from last year, that's for sure. After the catch, he has some wiggle to make defenders miss and excellent speed to pull away. Durability was an issue throughout his career. That's the only factor keeping him from a higher grade projection. So this is like, I really could envision, and a part of me would hate this. The Rams have the 13th overall pick. I could absolutely see them taking Tyson at 13. And that would be a freaking nightmare for me because I just have zero concerns about Tyson when he plays in the NFL just being good. You know, maybe he's not the best wide receiver in the class. Like Omar Cooper is really good, and so are Lemon and where's he at? Oh, Lemon's at 11, and then Carnell Tate. Like Carnell Tate's good, and he has the Ohio State pedigree. So like I'm not really going to argue that, but I just think Tyson's going to be really good. And you know, to tie all this together, like if Jeremiah is right, let's just say they both get picked exactly at 21 and 31. Well, then on the Thursday night of the draft, when it's over, we are saying that ASU had 2 first-round picks in the same draft. And I don't want to sound like too much of a homer, but I think that would be an absolute grand slam of a night. Absolute grand slam for ASU. It would be, and I honestly think that Iheanachor would be a little bit more important because then you could sell, especially if Saga Tuatele remains on staff, which for at least this next year he's going to stay on staff, and it doesn't look like there hasn't been any sort of like rumors or anything that are like, oh, I think Saga Tuatele might leave. Like, no, like. You could sell high level offensive line transfer portal players, but really high level offensive line recruits. You could point to Max Iheanachor getting drafted in the first round and say, hey, not only are we putting an NFL offensive tackle into the draft, we are putting them into the first round of the NFL draft. And that's what these kids care about, okay? If you listen to any, in fact, I later when the Sun Devil Source interview, whenever that gets posted on their podcast feed, they're having Cutter Boley and Omarion Miller on the show. Whenever you listen to any interview where they're like, why did you come to ASU? It's always, I think I can get developed to go to the NFL. Especially Boley, I think. And look, the Tyson, you can see the Tyson string, the second order effect of him being so highly rated is, if you're Reed Harris, if you're Omarion Miller, like, okay, well, I can be the next Tyson or whatever. I can be developed by Hines Ward, whatever it is. And the reason why I don't think that's quite as important is because in recent years, we've seen two great ASU wide receivers go in the first round in N'Keal Harry and Ayuk. And it's just wide receivers are just way more. It's easier to find. There's just so much more of them. There's so many more people on this earth who are just like athletic, you know, uh, whatever 6'1" guys who can run fast, catch the ball, and like it's a much more attainable position for a school like ASU that doesn't have the, it's not a blue blood, right? So that while Tyson is important and it's great to have Reed Harris and Amarian Miller and Braden Vinesbright come in, I think Iheanachor potentially getting picked in the first round would be so much more impactful. And the reason why I feel more and more confident about it is because he's an offensive tackle. Like teams, let's say a lot of teams think, yeah, we have him as our 31st overall player. Like we have him as a borderline first rounder. But if you're a contender, especially if you're one of these teams in the 20s in the draft, and you're like, well, we need an offensive tackle. Like we can't, like we need to get this position figured out. You'll be like, okay, well, maybe we'll reach a little bit for an offensive tackle. And you look at a lot of these mock drafts, they have Iheanachor going to the Eagles at 23rd. So there's a chance like they get picked within 5 picks of one another. A team that's a contender that needs offensive line help, the New England Patriots. Okay. Right? Like as we saw throughout the whole year, and I think that they could plug him in somewhere. Like, I just think that it's becoming more and more likely that Iheanachor will become a first-round pick. And if that happens, I just think I've said on this show before, like, whatever day the NFL draft is in April, that Thursday, which, side note, it is ridiculous that we are at the beginning of March. The combine is like late February. And we just said, oh, yeah, 2 months of just speculation. Mock drafts change a little bit, but it's like, why can't the NFL draft just be at the end? I just hate it so much because it just makes listening to football content horrible because it's just the same things being talked about over and over and over and over again. But it is what it is. So anyway, I just think he'll have a really high market, and there's no character concerns with either of these guys. Iheanachor doesn't have any injuries, right? So I don't know. And again, tying it back to like what that individual day can mean for ASU football, I would say that it would be, in terms of just the best days, the best single days of the Dillingham era. And I'm not going to say, oh, the day Sam Levitt committed, like, yeah, he was a random quarterback at that time. Like, I'm not going to put that. I would say the only days ahead of it would be, in some order, the number one would be the day you beat Iowa State in the Big 12 championship game. Number 2 is when you beat BYU to kind of really set yourself up to get to that Big 12 championship game. Number 3, I think beating Texas Tech was enormous. I think I've said it on this show before. I think that game kind of legitimized ASU in some ways more so than any game or anything from the 2024 season, in a weird way, even though it was just one win. But we're seeing with like some of these, how much guys Texas Tech's going to have drafted. Like they might have 4 guys go in the first 2 rounds, and David Bailey's going to be like a top 5 pick. So like it's a huge individual day. I think maybe you could put the Texas game in there as well, even though ASU lost. I don't know. I wouldn't put that ahead of BYU or Iowa State. You could argue that third because it showed that going into that game, like there was a chance ASU got blown out. A lot of people thought that was going to happen, and because of the way you lost or got screwed or whatever you want to say, the national reaction from that game was like, "Oh, ASU was really good." And that gave us a classic game to remember and all of these things. So that could be up there too, but I don't really want to put a lot. Like, I think that's the top 5 if a potential NFL draft happens where you get 2 first-round picks, which I think that hasn't happened. think it was the year 2000. So it's been 25 years. It was the Todd Heap and Adam Archuleta in, I believe, the 2000 draft. And so, like, again, we don't know what's going to happen. And honestly, like, it would still be excellent if you told me at this time last year, like, Max Iheanachor is going to go 36th overall in the 2026 NFL draft. Like, that's still an excellent result for him. But I just, as we get closer to this draft, like, offensive linemen are so valuable. He has the athletic traits. He has the production. He has the tape. All of these things line up, and it's like, yeah, Max Iheanachor could definitely go in the first round. And so for him, that would be excellent. He has been, I think I said Kyle Scott was the most underrated player, kind of glue guy on the ASU turnaround these past few years. I think Iheanachor is kind of just too good, and he's too, I would say, well known, and he's been on draft. He was on draft radars last year, but just not as high as he's projected to go. But like, he is someone who doesn't get talked about enough. If you look at the touchdown run against Texas Tech to win the game, the Rayleigh Brown touchdown run, they ran to the right side because that's Iheanachor. You don't want to run to the left side with your not as good offensive lineman on that side against that Texas Tech defense. You run to the right side where you have Iheanachor blocking. And I haven't looked into this, but I imagine like the outside runs that went to the right probably did better than the outside runs that went to the left last year, just in part because of him, because he has, quote, knockback power from Daniel Jeremiah. So, and again, if he goes on the Eagles, like, that's a great fit because they run the ball so much, and he can learn behind Lane Johnson. So I think that's probably the best case scenario for him. In terms of just 23rd, like, you're well within the first round. You're not like in one of the last 3 picks or whatever. I just, it seems like way more of a possibility than it did before the combine. I think that's awesome for him. He had a good split in the 40-yard dash, 10-yard split. So I just think it's great. And, if you add in Keith Abney going in the second round, and then, Keyshawn Elliott, maybe a 4th rounder, 5th rounder, and then another guy gets picked, like 5 picks, like, I'll take it. That's not the end goal. Like, there are teams that are going to have a lot more guys picked than ASU in the NFL draft, but it's showing growth. And I think all three of the guys who will get drafted, or all 4, they were all 3-star guys. Elliott for sure, because he freaking went to New Mexico State. Keith Abney definitely was a 3-star. Jordyn Tyson was a 3-star coming when he went to Colorado. And then weirdly, I think Iheanachor might have been a 4-star, but it's a little different when you're coming from JUCO. Speaking of which, like, Iheanachor is probably a big reason why ASU got Jermaine Mitchell from JUCO, the highly rated JUCO player. So being able to show high-level recruits like, hey, all of these guys were 3-stars, and and 3 of them are going in the first 2 rounds of the NFL draft. That's just a big selling point. And you could convince these guys like, oh, well, I'm at a starting higher point than this, so what can I do? And now you have the financial backing to really sway these guys, and you don't have to give them the most money necessarily. Sometimes you do, and that's part of it. But you get, hey, like, someone else is offering you X, we can offer you, 15% less than that, and you get to. There's a real pathway to get drafted, and you get to live in Tempe, and you get, a coach that has a good vibe and good assistant coaches, all these other things that you would sell in addition to the money, but you don't have to drop the biggest bag. You can have the 3rd highest offer, and maybe a kid's like, yeah, man, like I think I still want to go to ASU, and so, yeah, I'm just really excited for the NFL draft. I talked about it for a freaking half hour. I was not planning to go this long, but I really think that the combine set these guys up, and with Tyson, like, his stock was so high that he could overcome. He's not going to fall out of the first round, right? Like, maybe he'll go later than, we would like. He could be the 4th wide receiver off the board with how Omar Cooper did, but he's not going to fall out of the first round. And so that in and of itself is a great thing, because it's it shows how highly regarded he is just as a player. And the only thing holding him back is the injuries. And so someone is going to fall in love with him and I don't want to say take a risk, but just go for the talent, So I'm really liking where ASU kind of sees itself for the draft. And it'd be great if one other guy could kind of show out his pro day and maybe get a fifth guy drafted. Because in my time watching ASU football, starting with I don't know what happened in the 2014 draft. I don't think they had that many guys. But in 2015 draft, after my freshman year of the 2014 season, they had 4 guys. Demarius Randall was a first rounder, and then it was Marcus Hardison, Jameel Douglas, and Jalen Strong were in like the mid rounds. And then the year after the 2021 season, I think Rashad White was 3rd round. Jack Jones, Rashad White both went kind of high. They're both still in the NFL. And then, Chase Lucas and the defensive tackle Davidson both were drafted as well. And I think they're both in the NFL. Chase Lucas definitely is. And I think, yeah, he's in the NFL too. So it hasn't been more than 4 in my time. And getting to 5, like that would be a significant step. So, and it doesn't say, oh, there's nothing to worry about. No, I'm not saying that, but it would just be a great thing to see. So that's enough football talk, but I just wanted to, and if you look at a lot of these top 50s, Iheanachor is not going to be this highly in all of them. The ESPN one, he's going to be in the 50s. If you look at any top 50, he is included. He might be in the 40s for it, but he's not and if you're that high, you have a real chance to go in the first round. And I think he's going to. And again, if worst case scenario, he's like a top of the 2nd round pick, and that's awesome as well. Like that's not that different of a selling point. It doesn't sound as good, and I wouldn't be like, oh, like it wouldn't be quite as much of a selling point. And that's why I think it's important to have 2 guys in the first round. But if you have, again, like it's still awesome if you have 3 guys in the first 2 rounds, so I like where ASU stands heading into the NFL draft. All right. What a game against Kansas that was. I wanted to go. Tickets were a little too expensive for my liking. I could have waited really until the end, but I need to save up some money. But I wish I had seen the smoke sheen go off for Bill Self getting ejected. ASU wins the game against Kansas 70-60. Bobby Hurley's career record against Kansas is 3-1 because they lost that game last year. And he is undefeated at home against Kansas. ASU basketball as a whole is like 5-0 at home against Kansas, which is really interesting. I don't know how far back that goes. ASU is up 40-20 at half. And of course, in typical ASU fashion, Kansas whittles that lead down to like a 2-point lead at one point, but ASU was able to pull away. Mo Odom was outstanding. And Masamba Diop, he looked pretty damn good too. He scored the first 9 points, 19-9 for Diop. I think look, as ASU fans, we absolutely have to be, I don't say worried, but just cognizant of the fact that like there's a really good chance he is playing for another college program next year. Like, let's just be honest. Like, we all know how it works right now. However, if he chooses to enter the NBA draft, he will get drafted. I will say that very confidently. I don't know if he'll be a first-round pick because this NBA draft is excellent and it's deep, and you see it with the way some of these NBA teams are handling their business in the back half of the season, for better or worse, mostly worse. But you kind of understand why from a long-term process. He was excellent in this game. And there were scouts at this game, right? Kyle Korver, I saw that he's an Atlanta Hawks scout, or he's part of their personnel department. He was at that game, and they were there to watch Darren Peterson, who actually, I think I'm not going to really crap on Darren Peterson. His shooting night, he was awful. I actually thought he played much better than his final stat line would suggest. Still managed to score 15 points despite, going 2 of 11 from 3, grabbed 10 boards. He had some good assists, 5 steals. Like, I actually don't think that was like the worst game from him, but I mean, the shooting was terrible. Badunga played really well, and then Trey White. But anyway, like Jop was awesome. He was awesome in that game. Almost a double-double. Had some he showed off his 3-point shooting ability, and just really affected a ton of shots at the rim as well. I think that was really impressive to see. And, look, ASU men's basketball, like it would take a run in the Big 12 tournament and probably a win over Iowa State this weekend to actually make the NCAA tournament. So, there's some talk. I saw Seth Davis and some of these national college basketball pundits were like, "Oh, does ASU want to get rid of Bobby Hurley?" And it's like, look, like it's you're still outside of the tournament. Everyone knew you pretty much needed to make the tournament this year for Bobby Hurley to keep his job here. But this shows that like Hurley, he's going to get an opportunity elsewhere. That I can see. Syracuse, I believe Penn State's open. I could see him going to either of those. Maybe a Big East school that's been thrown about a lot. Like this team, this has been a better experience for this team than I expected, right? If you told me they are going to finish with a winning record, because no matter what happens against Iowa State, you're either finishing 17-14 or 16-15. And like, that was better than people thought. Like they were expected to be the worst team in the Big 12, and they're clearly not the worst team in the Big 12. They're a below average Big 12 team, but not by a lot. And, now you have wins over Kansas and Texas Tech this year, and you have potential to beat Iowa State. It's just unfortunate that you got swept by Colorado and that Oregon State loss. Had you won Oregon State, you'd be 17-13 right now. Had you held on to the game against UCF, and like if you look at some of these individual losses, it's like, man, like we could be having a very different conversation right now if 2 games go differently. 2. It would be 18-12 right now in the Big 12 with wins over Kansas and Texas Tech. Like, it's a credit to this team. It's a credit to Mo Odom. It's a credit to the scouting to find a guy like Pig Johnson from NAIA. The rebounding's awful. Like, this team can't rebound well. Like, in this game, they got vastly out-rebounded, still won by 10 points, and it's hurt them this year. There's no doubt about it. And some of the bad stuff from, Hurley ball, like it shows up this year. I'm not gonna, sugarcoat this too much, but like, it's really cool to just see this end in a way that's not a complete disaster, because Bobby Hurley's tenure at ASU has not been a complete disaster. It really hasn't been. Again, like you cannot. This is why I really dislike when ASU fans do the cross-sport comparisons with Kenny Dillon. Oh, like it's football. ASU football, people care so much more. People are much more upset when ASU football is bad or mismanaged than men's basketball. And women's basketball, there is not as much. I think the level, the barrier to get to be pretty good where ASU women's basketball is right now. And I don't want to say this to diminish what Molly Miller's done, because it looks like now they're going to make the tournament. Sometimes me waiting is helpful in recording, because you get results that you can actually build off of. And so, but there is less NIL money can go further in women's basketball than it does for men's basketball. There's less, and I think that's just kind of part of it. So anyway, the men's basketball, it is a huge uphill battle at ASU. especially for the entirety of Hurley's tenure. Like we talk about, the Desert Financial Arena was extremely outdated the day Hurley took this job. Okay. And it's even more now. So it's going to get renovated, but like that process isn't going to happen overnight. And you're still in a pro sports market where you have the 3 professional teams, you have ASU football. You're at best the 5th option. You could go either way between them and GCU. Now, ASU's never lost to GCU, but GCU has the branding and the money cannon that they fire into their program and the good publicity they get from some of the media in town, and that they have the Havocs, whatever. They're 0. They have yet to beat Arizona State men's basketball. I just think that has to be noted. But anyway, like, and this isn't, a lot of these issues are not unique to ASU men's basketball. Like we talk about this, the unique difficulties of being a college football program in a pro sports town. It's even more so being the men's basketball program in a pro sports town. I'm from Seattle, or I'm from Tacoma, but like UW men's basketball, they are down the pecking order, especially now with the Kraken. Like that's just one more thing that comes in the way. I know Miami basketball made the tournament, but like the U is not like some basketball program, and you look at USC basketball, UCLA. I mean, in terms of just like rowdiness and like juice in a game, you can literally directly link it to the alternative or other sporting options in town. And I know that sounds like cope. It sounds excuse making, and there's some of that mixed in there for sure. Like this doesn't apply to every team, but it's also like you can't say that about like some of these Big East schools where it's like, okay, but that's the number one thing at their specific school too, because that's the thing with men's basketball. If you're at a football school or a school with a football program, is like you're second already, and then you're also behind the pro teams. So it's not like Villanova where you're the number one thing at Villanova, or St. John's back in the day, or now. There's all sorts of examples I could name off, but like that's just how it goes. And so that's going to be a challenge for any coach that comes in. But it was a challenge for Hurley, and the pandemic didn't help. And there's a million reasons. Like if you actually follow this program closely and you go to games and you've been to the arena, you have to, like, it all makes sense. And that's why like there's a very strong case that he is the second best coach in ASU men's basketball history. And I don't think there's a good argument against it. You could say Frieder, but it was short-lived. You could say Sendek, not as many tournament appearances, shorter tenure. Now Sendek did make it further in the tournament, and he had James Harden, and so I could debate him and Sendek, and Sendek's a good coach, right? Like we're seeing it at Santa Clara. But I think that this was a good way for the Hurley era at ASU to potentially end. I'm glad it's not like some of these years where the end of the finish is a complete disaster, and the vibes are bad, and there's all sorts of different things, and we've seen the vibes bad be this year, but that's partly just because of who Hurley is. So anyway, like I'm happy it ended this way, and I know the season isn't over, but this kind of feels, this is a personal thing, but like, in the final year that Pete Carroll was on the Seahawks, they went 9-8. They were lucky to get to 9-8. I mean, that team was not good. And the last game of that year, I'm sorry, kind of what I think of as spiritually the end of the Pete Carroll era was a game they had. It was Monday Night Football against the Eagles 2 years ago in Seattle, and Drew Lock started, and the Seahawks win 20-17, and Drew Lock throws a game-winning touchdown to JSN to end the game. And that kind of felt like one of those early 2010s, but before the Legion of Boom kind of came in, like 2010, 2011 era Seahawks games where like it's just Pete Carroll and he's chewing his gum and he's hyped, and you kind of win a game just based off juice and energy and not necessarily talent. And that's not 1-to-1 with this game with Hurley, because like I think ASU's guys played well, but I think it's kind of a symbol. It was a symbolic ending, even though it wasn't the actual last game. And that's what I'm kind of getting at. Like, this is not the last game Hurley will coach at ASU. And if they make the tournament, then he'll be here potentially another year, right? Like, that's not out of the question, but they have like a probably 3% chance on this day to make the tournament as I speak. And so like, this is a good final memory and a deserving final memory for Bobby Hurley if his tenure ends. And there's a good chance there's only 3 games left, right? They could lose to Iowa State. They could lose the first game of the Big 12 tournament, and they could lose whatever the NIT or the Crown or whatever tournament they're in. It would be the Crown most likely. And that would be that. And I'm hoping there's more than 3 games. I'm hoping we get a win in I hope we beat Iowa State, and I hope we win as many games as possible. But like, there's 4 games left, there's 5 games left, whatever. But this feels kind of like the going out on a high note and a good final lasting memory. And when you add in the fact that it's Kansas, you have Bill Self getting kicked out of the game, you have Darren Peterson playing, and like, there was a lot of attention that this game kind of garnered. And it's just, as I'm talking about it more, I'm kind of getting more sentimental about it. I'm like, you know what? This is like, it's nice when things kind of end in not a thud, you know? And so that's kind of what I'll remember this game as. And who knows, maybe it kept their season alive. We'll see how it plays out. Another team that has its season alive is ASU women's basketball. It's been an interesting season for them. It started out fantastic. They start out the year undefeated. They're one of the last undefeated teams left. And then Big 12 play hits, and they played well against the bad teams, and they did not play well against the good teams. They started 15-0. They lose at BYU, and then they really suffer some bad losses. They got blown out by TCU. They lose some close games to K-State, to Cincinnati, to Baylor on the road. They got clocked by Iowa State 90-64 back in February. And that game, like, it was like, okay, like, it's a good start, but how does it play out? They lose to BYU on senior night. They lose to Texas Tech on the road. But then, credit to Molly Miller, credit to the players for seeing the eye, keeping their eye on the prize, even through a bad end of the regular season, undoubtedly. They beat U of A for the 3rd time this year, 3-0 against U of A. Becky, the attendance Burke, I hope you I hope you look at that schedule and you see that you were 0-3 against ASU this year. But the attendance. That is one of my biggest pet peeves in college sports. And I made fun of U of A's attendance at the end of the year for their football program. But like, ultimately they beat us, right? They beat us at the end of the year. Attendance doesn't win games. Okay. You know who doesn't have good attendance? Miami football. They played in the Natty. I saw Stanford win a bunch of games growing up with not great attendance. It is great. It's a great thing to have, and it usually correlates to success, but it's not a 1-to-1. Anyway, end rant on that. But today, they beat Iowa State, and it was their first quad win of the year. And Aya Abdeen, who works for Last Word on Sports, she devils in detail. She does a bunch of stuff. She's a great source for ASU women's basketball. Really good stuff from her Twitter tonight. And you look, okay, she has her story. I'm going down. So this is a good tweet or retweet from her. First quad win of the season, huge resume booster. ASU was on the bubble, And then Oklahoma State potentially could be another quad one win for ASU women's basketball. So this was a huge win. You get that quad one win because the reason ASU women's basketball was a bubble team to begin with, despite having a regular season record of 22-9, they were still in the bubble. It's because of what I mentioned earlier. Like, they beat up on the bad teams and they lost to the good teams. They were kind of like the Steelers of this past year in the NFL. Not an exact comparison, but like, they won the games they were supposed to, they lost the games they were supposed to. And there is, I think sometimes in sports, like, that gets criticized, like that's a backhanded compliment. I don't say that. Like, there is so much value in that, especially with where ASU basketball, women's basketball was in the past. Like, they were just bad, and so there's so much credit to just beating the teams you're supposed to beat. They did that 3 times against U of A, and then they beat a team maybe they weren't supposed to beat in Iowa State, and they won. They were up start to finish in that game, and it shows Miller making adjustments. It shows keeping the team involved, and it shows, credit to Gabby Elliott. She had a great game in this one, and now the game against West Virginia is just, it's only an opportunity, right? If you lose, you're not going to get really, it's not going to hurt you that bad. And if you win, then like, you're in the tournament. You don't have to worry about winning the Big 12 championship. You're just in the tournament. And ESPN Plus, that's unfortunate. But I don't think ASU was like safely in, but I think that I think that if you're a fan, like, it just feels a lot better having beaten Iowa State. And now it's like, okay, you have the quad one win. Let's see what Oklahoma State women's basketball did. Thank you to Doug Tamaro for talking about a potential backdoor quad one win. Oklahoma State won against Kansas. So I don't know exactly how that factors in, but if that makes them a quad one win for ASU women's basketball, like, that's great. And I'll be very interested to track the score for this game tomorrow and kind of see what happens against West Virginia. When they played the last time, ASU lost by 10 at West Virginia. So they've only played them once. They played them in Morgantown, and they get another chance at him. And if you just look, like, one team is 24-9, another team's 24-6. It's like, okay, like, it's not. West Virginia's better, and the fact that they have blown some of these teams out. They've had the bye in the tournament as well, or buys, I should say. You shouldn't, if you're a fan, like, that's the importance of this win over Iowa State, is that you should not expect to beat West Virginia, I should say. But you have a chance, and I am worried about the fact that, like, when they beat teams, you got a 58-point win, a 50-point win, a 32-point win, 12-point win. Like, that's you talk about beating the teams you're supposed to beat. So, they won't be favored in this game at all. But hey, they put themselves in a position where this is no longer like, oh, we need to win this game no matter what. It's like, okay, like, we're probably on the right side of the bubble. We'll see how it plays out. I've said before, like, I think Molly Miller is a well enough known women's basketball name that simply having her, like, I think that stuff comes into play, whether consciously or subconsciously, I should add, in these selection rooms. And so it's good that, maybe they're in the first 4 or whatever it is, but I think they're going to make the tournament, and then who knows? Like, they're going to look, you're going to have to play really good teams in the tournament. That's not something ASU has, succeeded at this year, and whatever. Like, it's getting to the tournament is a fantastic. I mentioned Grand Slam. It is already a Grand Slam. The fact that we're at this point, that you just turn it around like that, and you could sell it to the great recruits that they're after, right? And so, it's been a really awesome season for ASU women's basketball, and it looks like it'll continue into the NCAA tournament. So it's a great spot to be in. Quick shout out to ASU softball, 19-3. Had some losses, who did they lose? I guess I can't even. But 19-3, like you can't really complain about that. They're dominating teams. If you look at these wins, like 9-1, 9-5, 9-2, 15-7, 10-5, and then hey, you win a close one against CSU Bakersfield, and they have set themselves up very well entering Big 12 play. They should be one of the favorites there. Credit to ASU softball, maybe the most consistent program at ASU. They're just always a wagon, and so had to shout them out. And we finish with baseball. Oh my gosh. How good did we feel after beating Oklahoma 15-3? We felt excellent. And then reality struck and humility came in. Losing to Oklahoma, the loss when you blow save, okay, that's not the end of the world. Losing to Mississippi State, Colt Carlone was excellent in that game. Mississippi State's probably a top 5 team in college baseball. I can live with that. You have to win one of these next two. You have to beat Tennessee or Texas A&M, and you get swept in the M&G Bank College Baseball Series. And now you can't really prove yourself for a bit. Maybe against TCU in mid-March, but you should sweep Loyola Marymount. You should beat Arizona. That's still going to be tough despite their record. And look, like we're just back at square one with this team. We're back at square one. We've seen their potential, and we've seen, to their credit, like they have not lost to any of these bad teams. They've had some closer games than you'd like against St. John's and Omaha, but they didn't lose. And, everything's fine in the big picture with this in terms of making the tournament. They haven't totally put themselves behind the 8 ball, but it's just really disappointing. I'm not gonna say everything's okay. And Willie Bloomquist, to his credit, he had the same attitude. He just said it was bad. And I'm sorry, you have to beat one of these teams. If you're trying to make strides this year, you probably should have beaten Tennessee. You should have beat either Tennessee or A&M. Or you should have, whatever. Maybe you beat Oklahoma and then you get swept. But you can't just lose 4 in a row like that. And they need to build off this. They need to, I guess, use the taste of their own blood to, get better or whatever it is. They need to understand what this weekend was, and know that they have work to do. And so I think it's really just as simple as that. You can't really come out of this with any other opinion. Maybe it's good that they got swept. Maybe it's really refocuses things. So, they have the Big 12 play, and we'll see how that goes. But just a really disappointing weekend in Dallas, and these college baseball series that they just do not work out well for ASU in recent years, and it's really disappointing. And it's just a really tough weekend for the baseball program. There's no way around it. And it's not like you can get you'll get back and you'll win some games against Loyola Marymount, but it doesn't change. The stench is still there, even if you sweep Loyola Marymount, okay, cool, you beat Loyola Marymount. It's just whatever. But it is what it is. They have to build on it. There's no way around it. So ASU baseball had to talk about them in this very positive episode of the show, but that was bad. That was not fun to just look at the score. I'm like, oh, they're losing again. They're losing. It's just, yeah. Oh, well, good stuff. Next, I'll probably be less football talk now that kind of the combine's over. Yeah, there'll be some recruits that pop in, and I see the ASU football is 18th in Rivals on 3, which that's good and whatever. But spring football will come, I guess, but nothing too much. It'll be more basketball and coaching search stuff, women's basketball in the tournament. So there's always something going on. All right. Thank you for watching and listening. Please like and subscribe on YouTube. Please rate and review on your podcast platform of choice. And as always, go Sun Devils.